This is Radio Taiwan International.
Welcome to the news on Radio Taiwan International. I'm Phil Koski coming to you from Taipei, Taiwan. We begin with a look at today's top stories for Thursday, November 13th. Foreign Minister says Europe deepens ties with Taiwan as security concerns rise. G7 reaffirms commitment to peace in Taiwan Strait. Foreign Minister Lin expresses gratitude. And St. Kitts and Nevis Prime Minister arrives in Taiwan, calls for stronger ties and shared growth. But first, today's sub-story. Foreign Minister Lin said Taiwan could become Europe's most beneficial partner as the continent pursues reindustrialization and rearmament. Speaking in a radio interview on Thursday, Lin said European governments increasingly recognize that stability in the Taiwan Strait is tied to the future of Europe's democratic development. He said Taiwan's technological strength and reputation for its backdoor-free products position the island as a reliable partner as Europe works to rebuild its industrial base and strengthen defense capabilities. A series of recent high-level exchanges highlights this shift. Vice President Xiao Kim attended the Inter-Parliamentary Alliance on China annual meeting in Brussels. Former President Tsai Ing-wen spoke at the Berlin Freedom Conference, and Lin has already made 3 visits to Europe this year. Lin said Russia's invasion of Ukraine, along with China's support for Moscow, has reshaped Europe's broader security outlook. He cited the September 3rd military parade in Beijing, where the leaders of China, Russia, and North Korea appeared together as a symbolic reminder of authoritarian coordination, prompting democracies to deepen cooperation and defend a rules-based international order.
So the Taiwan issue, or the Taiwan Strait issue, is no longer just a cross-strait matter. It is a global issue. I have also seen more countries' naval vessels exercise freedom of navigation through the Taiwan Strait. Every time the G7 summits or foreign ministers' meetings issue statements, they now include peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait, and that shows Taiwan is not alone.
Lin said. He added that Taiwan's strengths in semiconductors, AI, and advanced manufacturing make it an indispensable and trusted economic partner. The Group of 7, also known as G7 foreign ministers and the European Union's High Representative for Foreign Affairs reaffirmed the importance of peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait in a joint statement issued after meeting in Canada. Taiwan's foreign ministry on Thursday welcomed this message, expressing deep appreciation for the G7's continued actions supporting regional peace and Taiwan's international participation. In the statement issued Wednesday local time, the G7 reiterated its firm support for Ukraine's sovereignty and denounced unilateral changes to the status quo in the Taiwan Strait, particularly by force or coercion. The ministers encouraged peaceful cross-strait dialogue and meaningful participation for Taiwan in appropriate international organizations while voicing concerns over China's expanding military power and nuclear arsenal, urging Beijing to demonstrate its commitment to stability through greater transparency. Foreign Minister Lin said it is the 4th time this year that the G7 has reiterated its stance on maintaining peace in the Taiwan Strait, underscoring that preserving the status quo has become an international consensus. Lin also thanked the G7 for once again voicing support for Taiwan's meaningful engagement in global organizations. The ministry said Taiwan will continue to work with its democratic partners to safeguard peace, stability, and prosperity in the region through comprehensive diplomacy, demonstrating Taiwan's role as a responsible member of the international community. Canada also invited foreign ministers from Brazil, India, Saudi Arabia, Mexico, South Korea, South Africa, and Ukraine to join the discussions on maritime security, critical minerals, economic resilience, and energy safety. Prime Minister Terence Drew of the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis arrived in Taiwan with his wife early on Thursday. He expressed hope for further strengthening the friendship between the two countries and deepening their cooperation. Drew stated that his government will continue to support Taiwan in gaining proper recognition in the international community for its contributions to global peace, development, and innovation. Drew and his delegation arrived at Taoyuan Airport in the early morning on an EVA Air flight, where Foreign Minister Lin welcomed them at the VIP terminal. Upon arrival, Drew expressed his delight at visiting the beautiful Republic of China, Taiwan, once again noting that each visit feels both familiar and inspiring. He also commented on the steadfast friendship that has flourished between the two nations for 42 years since the establishment of diplomatic relations. Drew highlighted that Taiwan was the first country to support St. Kitts and Nevis after its independence, emphasizing that their partnership is built on a foundation of trust, respect, and a shared vision. He expressed his admiration for Taiwan's achievement in science, technology, and education, stating that each exchange provides his young, ambitious nation with new opportunities to learn and grow. This is Drew's third time visiting since taking office, and Taiwan's Foreign Ministry notes his delegation also includes Foreign Minister Denzil Douglas, Permanent Secretary in the Prime Minister's Office Naima Hazel, and Ambassador-at-Large Leon Nara Nelson. During the trip, he will meet President Lai Ching-te to discuss bilateral cooperation and shared concerns, attend a banquet hosted by Lin, witness sister city agreements between the capital Basseterre, Taipei, and Tainan, and visit local businesses as well as cultural and development sites. The top U.S. Armed Service Committee representative has backed Taiwan's inclusion in the RIMPAC joint military exercise.
The U.S. Congress has again supported inviting Taiwan to join the Rim of the Pacific exercise, RIMPAC, through the National Defense Authorization Act, NDAA. Representative Adam Smith, the top Democrat on the House Armed Services Committee, said such an invitation signals to Beijing that not only the United States, but regional partners would jointly back Taiwan's efforts to strengthen its self-defense. Smith reiterated the point at a recent Atlantic Council forum in Washington, saying RIMPAC's multinational structure and integrated combat platforms help bolster allied cooperation and demonstrate deterrence. The exercise, led by the United States since 1971, reached an unprecedented scale in 2024, with 29 participating nations. China, however, has not been invited since 2018. In October, the Senate's updated NDAA strongly recommended that the Department of Defense invite Taiwan, requiring the Pentagon to provide Congress with an explanation if it decides otherwise. The legislation also encourages joint U.S.-Taiwan weapons development and production, a measure aimed at reinforcing Taiwan's defense capability while expanding U.S. manufacturing capacity. Smith said the global security environment is changing rapidly and that U.S. defense acquisition must accelerate to match advances in cybersecurity, unmanned systems, and counter-drone technologies. He warned that lengthy procurement cycles are no longer viable. To address the challenge, the House Armed Services Committee has held multiple hearings with traditional and emerging defense firms, including sessions in Silicon Valley. According to CNA, Smith said China claims Taiwan is pushing for independence, but he sees no indication that Taipei intends to directly challenge Beijing. He said China amplifies independent sentiment to justify its hardline behavior and argued that reducing military pressure on Taiwan could reopen discussions on arms sales. He added that Congress's stance is not merely unilateral support, but a strategic alliance signal, internalizing the Taiwan Strait issue and warning Beijing that any conflict would involve not just the United States, but a broad coalition of Indo-Pacific partners. Joey Chow for RTI News.
A new update in the tariff negotiations. U.S. media reports that the United States is demanding investments between $350 billion and $500 billion US from Taiwan, responding to legislators' concerns that such investments may require the central bank's foreign exchange reserves. Central Bank Deputy Governor Yan Zhongda said the bank alone manages its reserves and that market conditions will affect whether they are needed for such large remittances. Per Politico, which cites anonymous sources familiar with the Taiwan-U.S. tariff negotiations, the Trump administration is raging for a clause in the tariff agreement that would require Taiwan to invest billions of dollars into the United States. The requirement would be similar to commitments made by South Korea and Japan earlier in 2025, likely with an amount somewhere between the two. This announcement caught the attention of legislators who questioned Finance Minister Zhuang Zui-yun and Central Bank Deputy Governor Yan on Thursday. Legislators pointed out that $300 billion is equivalent to nearly 10 trillion Taiwanese dollars and questioned how Taiwan's potential contributions were being compared to South Korea and Japan, despite Taiwan being much smaller in scale than both. Zhuang stated that the results are not finalized yet and that the negotiation team will announce their progress when the time is right. Thanks for joining me for the news. I'm Phil Laskowski. Stay tuned for another 50 minutes of English language features brought to you by Radio Taiwan International.